Hey guys, welcome back to the Obi Thorn Alliance. And what are we doing today, Jacob?
We are doing what makes an excellent murder mystery.
So stick around and find out what we think. So, murder mystery. Extremely popular at the moment. Lots and lots of shows and movies have came out that follow this genre of murder mystery. Some popular ones at the moment, we've got Truth Be Told. We've got Only Murderers in the Building. Bad Sisters that you watched the other day. Would that be considered a murder mystery?
Yes.
Yeah, so it's a really popular genre. They also seem to have this theme of tacking on podcasts, which seems to be reoccurring in murder mysteries. So we're going to delve into what makes a good murder mystery. So to start off with, what do you reckon the best murder mystery that's on at the moment? That's an ongoing series or has recently finished?
The Sinner, because was an anthology series and it had different crimes, but the main detective would solve them. I think keeps the crime fresh, because the problem with having basically different crimes, you go, well, how can they keep on happening? Well, with making an anthology series, they're different crimes just with the same detective. Well, I think the Sinner really nailed that element.
Yeah, I agree. We'll delve into that a bit later. I reckon the most interesting crime series I've seen in recent times is probably Black Snow, which is an Australian show on Stan. And I think that that's going to follow that same idea of an anthology series, so that's what I'm hoping for. So we'll delve into that a bit later of why we think an anthology series works well. What do you reckon is one of the worst ongoing murder mysteries that we've seen? Possibly popular too, because there's going to be ones out there so bad that no one watches them. Ones that actually are popular but we don't really get why.
Truth be told, in a way, because season 1 I enjoyed, but season 2 for me wasn't as good, even though there's a season 3, but part of me isn't really looking forward to watching season 3. If season 2 did a good job, I would want to watch season 3, but we all have different opinions.
That's the first one that comes to mind for me. So Truth Be Told is kind of an anthology series in the way that each season is focused on a different crime.
And podcast.
But we've had a lot of characters that carry over, which is fine. That can still be part of an anthology series. But they've tried to link each season together so much that it's not separate anymore. And again, that's something we can get into a bit later. So Sinner's a really good one that you like, that's done it well. Truth Be Told's probably on the other scale that haven't quite nailed.
So one that got cancelled is One of Us Is Lying, that season 1 really enjoyed and season 2 didn't, and now it's gone kapoof.
Yes, that's another example of a mystery series that, followed a very a unique formula and ultimately led to it not being renewed. So let's talk about what makes a good murder mystery. So for you, what do you think's a must for a murder mystery?
For you to like the person that's trying to solve the crime. So Poppy in season 1 I thought was a lot more likable, and then in season 2 they tried to add backstory, what was really backwards writing. So that was the problem with making it bad. But I think you got to like who your main character is, and then the mystery has to be something that's not too far-fetched but keeps you guessing in each episode. Like Truth Be Told season 1, even though they flip the switch and they make it somewhat annoying, it keeps making you guess and it's really enjoyable. What season 2 makes absolute no sense.
So you think the person that's solving the mystery needs to be somewhat likable?
Or has an interesting backstory.
So do you think the backstory is something that always has to be there, but if it's done right, it adds a lot to it?
Some intrigue with the character. It doesn't have to be like we know everything about the character, but something that's like, you said in Black Snow, like he likes people bashing him for whatever reason, like something interesting about the character that you want him to solve his crime or what the person is doing.
I think the backstory needs to be somewhat consistent and introduced correctly, whether it's introduced from the start and stays throughout, or whether you wait to at the end of the first season then you introduce it. But it needs to be, if it gets introduced late,
Like season 2 and Truth Be Told.
It needs to be, you know, related to a much bigger, interesting picture, or not bother at all. So I think of, with Truth Be Told, they keep adding in these extra layers to Poppy to make her seem more interesting, but at the end it just makes her complex and they don't add up. Where, going back to Black Snow, from the beginning we see this character, you know, he's in a bar, he's playing a skill test machine, he gets a stuffed toy, he's talking to someone, and they're saying, come on, give us the money, and he pays them, and then they beat him up. You're like, what the hell, he just paid someone to bash him up. And then they kind of leave it at that for a while, and they're kind of like, well, what's going on? He has a tattoo on his arm with a date. The person later in the show someone goes, well, what's that date about? And he goes, oh, well, you know, it's the date my brother went missing. Kind of leave it for a few more episodes, and you're kind of like, oh, what's going on? And then eventually he tells this story about, you know, going to time zone, playing a skill tester machine, him remembering this day, his mother getting bashed and getting killed, and his brother running away. And basically saying he's never seen his brother since, and he doesn't know if he's dead, he's looking for him, or whether he doesn't want to be found. You know, and they've built that up, and at the end of the season, we want to know about it, but they haven't given it away, and they don't just chuck in something that doesn't make sense whatsoever. So it's just a nice little build-up of intrigue, but it's a side story to the actual main mystery. Why anthology series work well, because if this show comes back for a second season, new mystery, first one's gone, and then he has his ongoing backstory mystery, which I think does well. What would you say Truth Be Told has done?
Basically added more backstory in season 2, and season 1 should have done that, so it's very backwards. Ryan were basically adding that the person that she's helping, they were childhood friends, and that's why they had that relationship. Well, it doesn't really make sense, because you should have season 1 as backstory, and season 2 shouldn't be the season when you have backstory. So that's why it felt not good writing.
Yeah, and the fact as well, with that murder mystery in mind, that the main character, it doesn't make sense why they would be solving mysteries. They're literally just investigative journalist that makes a podcast. Why are they solving murders? I think they have to actually make sense. Where in Black Snow, he's a police officer. It makes sense why he's solving murders. I think of, I don't know if you call it a murder mystery because they solve lots of things, but a show like The Mentalist.
Oh, yes.
You know, his job, it makes sense why he's involved in these crimes and trying to solve them. But he also has his own backstory that builds throughout. So you've got each episode something new, trying to solve something, maybe an overarching backstory that's going on. Works well. But Truth Be Told is like, you had an awesome story, and then you go, well, let's give it some context now. We're not content with it just being, you know, she solved this awesome mystery. Let's add a murder that makes no sense why she'd be involved in, why she'd be asked to be involved in it. And then let's end the season with trying to plot for another reason for her to be involved in a mystery. You know, someone goes missing close to her. Like, that doesn't add up. Why does this keep happening? What does The Sinner do that does really well? I've seen bits of it, but I'm not as familiar as yourself.
Basically, because it's an anthology series, his storyline is the main one, but we get other things that happen, and he solves the crimes, and then his story continues throughout, instead of there's like one overarching crime. We actually get satisfaction throughout the 4 seasons.
From that, do you think that a murder mystery, it cannot have besides a backstory or a side story, it can't have the main mystery carry over? Like, it has to be resolved in one season, and then the next season has to be something else, because I don't think it works to carry over mysteries. You know, if you complete a whole season and you still don't know who killed the person from the start, that doesn't add up. Like, they've got to resolve it.
Guess it depends how good the main mystery is, but it's better to move on.
Move on, or, yeah, as you said, if you can do it right, but I've yet to see that really go well for them. And I think, yeah, it can't carry over between seasons. And I think why anthology series for me are perfect, because you get to like the person doing the investigating, new murder, new murder. I really don't like this formula that, One of Us Is Lying has went for, where mystery solved, but someone saw you do something else, so now we're going to add a whole nother season where where they're playing cat and mouse with you, and then that ends in a way that, they could do it again, and they just keep doing it. And it's like, these people don't, no one lives these lives where these things keep happening to you. School kids don't see a murder, resolve the murder, see another murder. Yeah, and that doesn't happen. But if you're a cop, that does happen, because that's your job. That makes a lot of sense. If you're a police officer, you move from case to case. But as teenagers, that doesn't happen. As a podcaster, that doesn't happen. Where I believe, I haven't finished the first season of Only Murders in the Building, but from what I can see is that show started off with seeing them, something happened at the start there, and then it goes backwards. It goes like, they're holding like a dead person. It goes, what happened before? And then it builds up, and then I'm guessing at the end of the season you kind of see what happens. And then from what you've told me, the next season it's kind of them trying to prove their innocence from where that finished, and that kind of works for me. It's not an anthology series, but it makes sense why that would happen, because it's kind of these group of people where it's this ongoing bigger thing that's going on. But I don't believe that murders and mysteries keep occurring around them. It's all seems to be related. If it was like the first season ended, they solved the crime, and then, they hear another person died in their building, and they're like, let's make another podcast. That would be stupid. That just doesn't happen. But if it's a continuation of the first murder, how they're related, I believe that. What other things do you think make a good murder mystery?
A balance between the human and the crime. Sometimes it's good to have an entertaining murder mystery, like the After Party comes to mind. It was an ingenious idea, but the main problem I still have with the show is that the ending, there's a season 2, but the ending doesn't make sense for there to be a season 2, unless because at the end they make it that the main character can help the police officer solve crimes for the next case. What if she's a police officer? It's her job to do it by herself. So why do you need a civilian to do it with you? That doesn't make sense.
Well, that's a show that's left us wondering and seeing what's going to happen. And my thought is, maybe it is an anthology series. Maybe Tiffany Haddish is actually the main character. Even though in season 1 she wasn't, she was the cop. Maybe that's what happens. Maybe she investigates another murder. And maybe that's why we had the kind of build-up episode of showing her backstory. Because that could work. She goes, solves another murder. I think that's fair. If it somehow follows the main male character, you'd be like, well, why would he be involved? He makes escape rooms for a living, and he's not a police officer. Him to be involved in another murder makes no sense. But possibly if it's an anthology, I think that's fine. But the name kind of leaves it stuck with this idea of it's always about an after party. Because if the next season's about something different, people go, why is it called the after party? Oh, well, because in the first season. So that seems like a weird reason to name a show. So you think a good mix between humour and like crime and trying to keep the storyline on track, where a murder mystery, for instance, that goes, there's the murder, but then they try and add all these other elements. For instance, again, we go back to Truth Be Told, they kept adding not only backstories, they try to make us care about the main character and her love life with her husband and them getting a divorce and
the sisters.
Yeah, and like that, where it has no relation to the actual part that we're watching the show for. We're watching it about the murder mystery, but they're trying to create a drama where they could be two separate shows. There could be a show about her tough upbringing, her dad being involved in motorcycle gangs, prison life, her family dynamic, her mother, going missing when she doesn't know who her mother is or whatever it was, I can't remember. That takes away from the actual solving of the mysteries. So you think they need to stay on task with it. You can have a side story, but the side story I think needs to be a mystery too. The side story can't be a love interest, or a divorce, breakup, or a family dynamic. That doesn't make sense. I think it's got to be a mystery. So you get the double mystery going on. So they're things that we'd like to see. What do you think are some more really things that ruin shows? What are some of the bad things that you don't like?
Things that One of Us Is Lying always done, and kind of not really show who the subjects or perpetrators at the very end. So I guess there's some evidence. They kind of keep it away from you. And truth be told, season 2 and 1 kind of did the same thing. Like, you never actually get the satisfaction of making the right guess.
So you like the idea of trying to guess?
Yes, I like trying to be smarter than feeling empowered by being smart. And then when the writers are like, we're not giving you that opportunity, it's like, oh, that's why I watch murder mystery for.
I think that's why they're popular, because people feel like they're part of it and they're interactive. And I think that's a cool thing to have, I reckon, but I think some can follow a different formula, which is quite cool. I know this isn't really a murder mystery because it's based on true events, but something like Blackbird, we kind of from the beginning know that he's the killer, but we're watching him try and prove or get evidence or a confession. And I think that can work as well for a show where we might see the crime take place and we see the person commit the murder. So we know who the murderer is, but we're watching the main characters discover the why, and we're learning the why. So we know who and how, but we don't know the why. And I think that can work as a murder mystery. So we're learning each episode, so they've intertwined because of that, and this happened, and I think that can work as well. It's kind of like a working backwards method. But then also the guessing is fine. I think with the guessing, though, it's hard because you've got to plant clues but not give it away. Because if people already know very early on who it is, it kind of ruins it. But then sometimes they do the double where it's like, they kind of like fake it. They're like...
Yeah, truth be told, season 1.
They kind of like very much set you up like it has to be this person. You're like, without a doubt, I'm certain of it. And then they give you one extra detail that makes you go, oh, no, it's this other person. And I think Only Murders in the Building have kind of done that. I haven't finished it, so I don't know exactly who killed the original character, the murder they're trying to solve, but they kind of lead you to believe that one person has done it, and then you kind of then find that they're covering up for something else that another person did. And I don't mind that because it kind of makes you certain this has to be the person, and then they flip it and you go, oh, actually... And I think, season 1 of Truth Be Told really does that you're so certain that it was one person, and then they flip it and you're like, oh, it's this person. They're actually just covering up for them. So I like that, so it keeps you guessing, and you couldn't really have picked that because they've kind of hidden all the evidence and then they give you the detail when they want you to. And I think that's fine too. So,
out of all the murder mysteries, which one would you watch again to try and relive the moment?
I'd probably watch season 1 of Truth Be Told again. I think that was really good, and even though I know who did it, I don't remember exactly every detail and reason, so I'd like to go on that journey again. I think that season 1 was actually a masterpiece, really. It was so well done, and the other seasons season 2 in particular has kind of hurt that badly, but... I would still watch season 1 again, I think of that.
Okay.
What about yourself?
Yeah, even though it would be the third time, probably Truth Be Told season 1.
What about The Sinner? Do you think there's any particular season there that you'd watch again?
Probably season 1 was the strongest season. It had the best balance of not knowing too much about the characters, but wanting that intrigue of wanting to know more about the main detective, and it just was the best season.
We're seeing obviously a big trend in these murder mysteries shows coming out. There seems to be, I reckon, the most common type of show that's coming out. We're seeing a mix of extremely serious to even somewhat funny. Like there's not lots of funny moments in Only Murders in the Building, but it's somewhat lighthearted, and maybe that's because of the cast they've gone with, but it has that lighthearted kind of feel to it. So we're seeing a lot of different variations, but what do you think about this concept of podcast being so intertwined for some reason in murder mysteries?
I think it works better in Only Murders in the Building, but in Truth Be Told, I don't know, I feel like she would get copyrighted, or the police would tell her, look, you don't have as much power as you think. Like, if anyone else were to do that in real life, it wouldn't work.
I think the first season of Truth Be Told does it quite well. That, she's kind of, telling this story about a case that she'd been involved in the past, like as a journalist, and then new evidence has come to life, and then through that it makes her think, well, maybe we've got it wrong, maybe they put the wrong person, and then that makes her go on a journey to try and like reopen a case from a journalist perspective. I think that was quite clever. The concept of solving a murder and bringing out an episode at the same time doesn't make sense to me. The podcasts don't come out that easily. You know, defamation lawsuits if you make accusations against the wrong person. Same as with Only Murders in the Building. You've got this one person who you think has threatened to kill you, and you then still bring out an episode like saying who they are. Like, are you not then putting yourself in harm's way? Like, I don't know if you would do that in real life. You know, call out a possible murderer, and you know, where they know where you live and they could come after you. I don't know if you would actually do that, or you would bring out the podcast once you know that person's gone to jail. Because if you and I thought we just saw a suspicious murder and we started doing investigating and we started making this podcast, and then suddenly we realised we got it wrong, there was nothing suspicious, you know, it was, you know, a suicide like they've got in, like supposedly in Only Murders in the Building. We've just made, you know, several episodes of this podcast where the ending's boring. Like, you wouldn't do it. You would want to at least be certain that you've solved the murder and you have an interesting story, and then you tell it. Because if you tell it each week and then it ends up that you're completely wrong, your podcast kind of ends there. Well, you wouldn't have brought it out unless you had a satisfying ending. So that doesn't add up to me. So do you think podcasts need to continue in these murder mysteries, or has been overdone now? We know there's lots of murder mystery podcasts, some about true stories, some are just, you know, they make them as, you know, entertainment, you know, like fictional, like a pretend murder, and they try and uncover it in kind of like a book as such. But do you think it's done? We don't need any more shows like it, or you think another show could do it better?
I guess if it's done right, but if it's done unrealistically, it kind of becomes unwatchable.
Yeah, I for me, I think it's done. I don't know any other way they could do it. I think season 1 of Truth Be Told did it a really clever way. Only Murders in the Building is kind of a fun concept that we got a director and someone was an actor, and then they want to use their sets of skills to make a podcast, and obviously their love for this one particular podcast brings them together. I like that. I think that's cool, but I think it's done. I don't think we can do any more shows where a podcast and a murder are going on at the same time, except for maybe if there's a podcaster that, you know, is writes and let's say they don't investigate murder mysteries, but they kind of, you know, might tell the stories of, you know, what detectives have already done, and tell the audience about murders that they didn't know, and, you know, the cool stuff that happened in real life, and then maybe they give out a detail that they probably shouldn't have, and then someone comes after them because they've, you know, exposed the truth. That maybe could be interesting. You know, they start getting threats like, stop making your podcast, like, you know too much, you found out too much. That could be cool, because then it's not really them investigating, they're just being told to stop, you know, talking about what's going on, because they're making too many people aware of a case that's already closed and they don't want it reopened. That maybe. But yeah, beyond that, I think we're kind of done with podcasting on murder mysteries.
One of Us Is Lying season 3 got cancelled. It proved that season 2 was not a good murder mystery, and really season 1 was very close-ended. It was just because of that ending, and I think it just needed one season.
To add to that, I think that whether it's writers of books or writers of shows, if you get it right the first time, you have a cool mystery and it gets solved and it's satisfying, just leave it at that. Don't get greedy and go, I'm going to make a second one because the first was popular. The first was popular, leave it at that. If you try and then add a whole nother murder or a mystery to it, I think it ruins it nearly every time. Truth Be Told is a good example. I think One of Us Is Lying is a great example, where they had success with the first book and they go, let's write a second one, and it just gets far-fetched. Just accept that it's one and done, you did it right. You don't need, you didn't have the intention of making it 2 seasons or 3 or 4, because you would have written it in a way that could have allowed it to continue. It very much ended closed shut, and you go, oh, it's popular, let's drag it out. You can't. You have to leave it open. Or if you think that might happen, improve your writing skills and write it with something that could be planted. So I think of Black Snow. that could end where it is, and I'd be like, okay, well, we never found out what happened with his brother. That's fine, but they've planted the seed, so if it continues on, you don't feel like they've just invented a backstory. Like they've suddenly gone, well, he actually became a cop because his brother. We already know that they've planted it, so they've kind of given it multiple options. So you got to do it that way. So yeah, that's my thought.
Well, thank you for watching. As always, like the video, hit the notification bell, like and subscribe. Comment down below your thoughts about murder mysteries, and see you in the next video. Bye-bye.